Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Friday. 3/4 of the way through August, something like that. I don't even know what day it is generally at the moment. Life's a little bit hectic at the minute. But good morning. As usual, if you are watching, please do pop your name, hello, insults, comments, whatever you want to in the comments so that I can say hello back, because it's only good manners. And I'm just very wary that the dog's running around because his food's just been delivered. Good morning, Maria. So Eric's on standby at the minute. They're very nice people deliver his food to the front door. So he's checking out at the moment. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, Jay. Good morning, good morning. It is greyish here in the south of England this morning. Not like August at all. In fact, it's almost autumnal out there at the minute. Good morning, Kerry. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Leslie. Eric he's supervising his food being unpacked. Pete's putting it into the freezer at the moment. So Eric's on standby to make sure that it's all there. Bless him. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, Helen. And I'll wait until Pete's sat down again. I forgot my water. It's on my desk. I like having staff. Good morning, Christine. Thank you. Good morning, Karen. Sun is out in Manchester. Excellent. Well, it ought to be, really. It's August, isn't it? The weather's just mad. Good morning, Willow Moon. You coming up here now? Come on, then. Oh. Go on, then. Let me come. Excuse me. Sort the dog out. There we go. There we are. Check out the plants. Just make sure they're all right. They're all up to standard, are they? All been watered properly? Yes. They're all right, are they? And your food delivery's okay, is it? You checked it all in? Got to make sure. Good morning, Trudy. Good morning, Lou. Good morning, Sue. Now, Pete is at his desk through the other side of the window. Good morning, good morning. If you are on the Kitchen Witch Facebook group and you haven't given StreamYard permission to use your name, I can only see you as Facebook user. So good morning, Facebook user. Maria, nice dress. Thank you. In the sale, Debenham sale. I buy clothes from charity shops or in the sale. Very rarely spend more than a tenner for anything. Very tight. Good morning, other Facebook user. Good morning. Eric's just licking the cushion. I don't know. Who knows? He is in disgrace at the moment. You may have seen my comment on Facebook yesterday. We have 17 dahlias. We labelled them all so that when we move them around or replant them next year, we know what colour they are. We wrote the colours on wooden plant sticks, put them in all the pots. Someone went round afterwards taking them out and chewing them up. Didn't you? Mm-hmm. Bless him. Oh. Bless him. Good morning, Sue. Sue's not tight but careful. I love clothes, but I don't ever want to spend lots of money. So, Willow Moon, that's a bit organised. It's very unlike us, actually, but because we want to put some of the dahlias in the ground next year, we need to know what colours they are because we've got different colour flower beds. It doesn't happen very often. Organisation. Now we're digging the cushions. You are very special, aren't you? I think you're broken, actually. But there you go. Good morning, Tony. So, actually, dahlias, plant tags, leads me very nicely and neatly into today's subject, which is garden magic. Yes, there's a book, because, there's always a book. And if there isn't a book yet, there will be. Garden magic. One of my very, very, very favourite places to be, and actually in the light of all the madness over the last year and a half, the garden has been a sanctuary, really. It is, now that we're both working from home, it's somewhere that you can step out to every so often throughout the day just to kind of... And Eric likes the garden, don't you? Yes. Like eating the plants and stealing the plant tags, and when he was a puppy, eating the shingle too. Good morning, Kay. I think probably when I was a child, I spent a lot of time in the garden. My dad, very, very keen gardener, and into organic and eco-friendly gardening way before it was ever popular and trendy. He always had a garden, still got a garden, always had an allotment. We had fresh organic food all the time, again, way before it was popular and trendy. And I guess that's probably where I got my love of gardening from. Good morning, Althea. My mother used to despair, apparently, because she'd dress me up to go out somewhere and I'd disappear off down the garden with my dad and come back covered in mud. I still do that now. So I think I probably got my love of gardening from him. I was lucky enough to work for a specialist glasshouse company for a few years, got to go to Chelsea Flower Show and all behind the scenes, and got to run a huge greenhouse with all the plants as well. So experience from that, I guess. Then my own first garden, had an allotment for a while as well. So I'm not trained as a gardener, but I've learned from experience and still continue to learn. You trial and error with some of the plants really in the garden, but I think it is an incredibly magical place. Live on the edge of the city, so my garden is not huge, so I'm moving around because the dog keeps licking me. Go to sleep. I put hand cream on and he keeps trying to lick it all off. Go to sleep. So our garden's not huge. We do have a little greenhouse. She's only 6 by 4 feet, Gertie, the greenhouse. And we pack as much into it as we possibly can. But it is my daily connection to nature. It is the daily connection to the energy of the land, of the plants, of Mother Nature. It is our gauge, really, to see what's happening. It is a little bit of a microclimate in our garden. It is all walled, and we are in the south of England, so we don't get necessarily extremes of weather. So we are quite lucky. We aren't too far from the sea, so we do have to deal with that. But yeah, we're lucky, really. It's quite a little microclimate in there. But it is my connection. It is the way that every morning when I let Eric out to do his thing, it's just a couple of minutes to breathe in the energy of the day, to take a look at the garden and see what's growing, to see what the birds are doing, to see what insects are happening. And we have, several years ago now, stopped using any pesticides, not that we used much anyway, but we've gone completely pesticide free, and nature has kind of stepped in. We do have a bit of a snail problem because we've got brick walls and they love the walls, but actually this year it's not been too bad, and I think it is the balance. We've got blackbirds in the garden, so they eat the snails. I've noticed the sparrows now hanging on the rose bushes and they're eating the aphids. So nature's kind of balanced itself out, and it's doing what it does to counteract the aphids and the problems. I would love to have a wildflower meadow, but in a garden that's the size of a postage stamp, that's not going to happen. But I did receive some free wildflower seeds this year, so I just put them in pots, and we've had some really pretty flowers come out of it. And we try and put as much diversity into the garden as possible from the plant aspect, so that we bring in different types of insects, butterflies, obviously, but bees and birds, but all of the tiny little insects too. So we've got quite a variety in there. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Lani. Sorry, got to scroll up now. Missed lots of comments. Kay found some lovely plant tags. They're iron and painted both herbs and vegetables. Excellent. We had wooden ones, which is why Eric took to them. They look like lolly sticks. He thought they were lovely to eat. Maria, I'd love to do a gardening course for dummies. There's plenty of good books and things out there. Maria, I think it is about learning from experience most of the time too. Christine, we used to always eat organic food, but we just called it food in those days. Yes. Yeah, we did too. Kay, does the salty water affect the garden differently to a more inland garden? Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not too bad at it because we're quite sheltered. But if you have got a garden right close to the sea, you do have to grow things differently and different plants because they are affected by the salt in the air quite dramatically. Good morning, Christine. Good morning, John. Another great subject, another one of my hobbies. Just got to cover carpentry, my real trade. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not any good at carpentry. We don't get any of the fun the blacksmith gets. Yeah, blacksmiths are very magical. Just dependable, steady, good old boys. Carpentry is an absolutely brilliant skill. John, I am in awe of you. Good morning, Zoe. Good morning, Jane. Monty Don, no, didn't have any formal training, learned it all just by doing it. For anyone that doesn't know, he's the presenter of Gardener's World. Definitely. Good morning, Jackie. My dad didn't have any formal training, but he's a wealth of knowledge on gardening stuff. If we get stuck, we ask him. Zoe, not good at growing plants, although I have kept a small English ivy alive since early on the lockdowns. Feeling quite proud of myself. Go you! It is trial and error. It's about learning, and you have to start somewhere. Good morning, Erin. Willow Moon. I'm near the sea. I can't grow aces. Oh, yeah, we have got a couple, but say we are quite sheltered here, so we're not too bad. But yeah, they are, I imagine they don't like the salty air at all. Christine, Monty, he was a jewelry designer before a gardener. He was creative, I suppose, in the blood kind of thing. But I think from the point of view of, if you looked at my garden and if you look at YouTube, you'll see videos of me wandering around the garden. Plenty of photos on my Facebook page too. It doesn't look, you wouldn't walk into it and say, oh, this is a witch's garden. But then I suppose what's a witch's garden? I suppose the witch's garden, you would assume to see lots of herbs and lots of poisonous plants. Can't have lots of poisonous plants because of Eric. Even the foxglove that we had this year in pots raised up out of the way so that he couldn't eat them because they are toxic. So you have to be careful when you've got pets in the garden because some plants are quite toxic to them. And he does have a habit of eating things. The ornamental grass he keeps trying to eat makes him sick every time he eats it. Anyway, I don't specifically grow plants thinking, oh, that's good for this or that's good for that. We pick the plants because we like the look of them, because they are the fantastic colour, fantastic shape, they're the right height. And of course, you have to tailor your plants to the type of soil in your garden. Ours is quite heavy clay, although parts of it now have been dug over the years and they are a lot better. Some plants don't like it. Most of our herbs are in pots because herbs are Mediterranean and they like free draining soil, and clay is not free draining soil by any stretch of the imagination. So our herbs we generally keep in pots. We also have one side of the garden which is in shade most of the day and the other side of the garden which is in sun most of the day. So you have to tailor the plants to the side that suits them best. Some get on better, some don't. Trial and error. But every single plant has magical properties. Every single plant has magical energies. So there are the traditional ones that witches use. Mugwort, for example. Belladonna, toxic, obviously. There's the ones you kind of think of when you think of working magic. There's all sorts. You can look in books. Some of my books have references and lists in. The internet has lists as well. These are the plants to use for this. These have magical purposes for this. But every single plant has them. So I don't think about growing them from the magical point of view. Although, having said that, did grow a woad last year just because I wanted to see what it looked like, and it did all right, and it's done all right this year as well. And a rue I bought specifically because I wanted to see what the rue grew like. Other things are just because they look pretty and they work within the garden, but you can use every single one of them. I save the petals, I save the seed heads, I save the leaves, I dry them all, doesn't matter what it is. If they aren't in a book, then you work it out for yourself. In fact, that's what I do from the get-go. Every single plant has its traditional meaning, but each plant is different. So I think it really pays to get to know the spirit of the plant. The spirit of each individual plant will be different. Even two dahlias next to each other, exactly the same plant, will have different plant spirit energies. So it's worth getting to know and connecting with that plant spirit to know what magic they can help you with. Let's look at some of the comments. They're all Alani's dad is a go-to for gardening. Yeah, dads are good for that, aren't they? Kay, when I found our new home 6 years ago, it had a 130-foot long garden. Fantastic. Well landscaped by the previous owner and mostly level lawn, so blessed I'm able to maintain it. Brilliant. Air garden, when we moved in, although not that big, was a wilderness. It was a grassy wilderness with random objects buried underneath the ground. At one point, we thought when we were digging it up that there was a body, but it was just a lump of concrete. So we had to start from scratch. And it's changed over the years too. When we first moved in, we didn't have children or plans for children. So we built a very nice grown-up tailored garden. But as children came along, it then became a sand pit and a paddling pool and all, things for games and toys. As children grew up and grew older, we reverted back to building the garden for us. And then when Eric came along and started eating the shingle, the garden changed again. So it has gone through lots of different changes over the last 25 years. It's fluid. It's a growing, living thing. So Jane says, let's get some of these up. What I don't know about composting can be written on the back of a stamp. What I learned from my mistakes might just fit on the roll of wallpaper. But isn't that the way we learn the best? It really is, isn't it? And composting is brilliant thing to do. Maria, I did manage to grow coriander and used it in salad and curry. Nice. All the other herbs were eaten by snails. Yeah, it is difficult. You've got concrete and walls and things as well, and snails just love that environment. It is a constant battle to keep the snails out. Christine, my front garden is a witch's garden, lots of herbs and some of them are toxic. I've not given a rue. I got given the rue the other day. I'm very pleased with the rue. It's grown really well and it's very pretty. Jumping through the comments here. Oh yes, Jenny says the poison garden in Alnwick is quite lovely. We haven't been yet. I have seen it several times on social media, but I haven't been. Thank you for the recommendation. Kay, I really want to do more of witchy garden as I still have flower beds I can utilise. So ideas gratefully received. I will go through some ideas in a while, but again, what makes it a witchy garden? Garden is a garden, really, isn't it? Tried saving the petals of roses, but didn't do it properly and they went mouldy. There are some basic rules of thumb to follow for that. Don't pick the rose petals when they are damp. So don't do it in the morning if they've got dew on them, or if it's just rained. Wait for a nice warm sunny day before you pick them so the petals are actually dry. I lay them all out on a big tray on pieces of kitchen towel. Just lay them out and I leave them on the conservatory table because it's nice and dry and warm. And then I turn them every so often. You have to, it's making sure they don't get wet or start out wet, really. John says, whenever I give advice to the new allotmenteers, the first thing I say is get a diary. Then you can look back on planting times and dates. Yes. What works, what didn't. Every year something is in abundance and something fails. Yep. You just have to take it on the chin. Absolutely. I did have an allotment for a while. It's hard work. It is hard work and you need a lot of time to put into it, but very, very rewarding. But you're dealing with nature. You're dealing with the weather. You're dealing with all of the different elements that come into it. You have to go with the flow, really, don't you, with that? Karen, I have 3 hawthorns that are near the house and the energies are so different. Beautiful, beautiful plant, very magical. But yeah, each plant has its own individual character and personality. Who says there were Land Rover brake blocks in my garden soil? Not what you expect to find, really. Definitely not. Oh, definitely not. The rose petals had naturally fallen. They may well have been damp. That tends to be, they will go mouldy if you pick them up when they're still damp. Dryness throughout from start to finish is the key to stop them from going mouldy. Kay says, because I have a communal field at the bottom of my garden, I hunt out the snails and rehome them in that field. I won't tell you what my husband does with the snails, but it involves flying through the air. Karina. Hi, Karina. Copper tape or copper pipe will keep snails away from certain areas of the garden. Yes, they supposedly don't like copper tape, do they? We tried some eco-friendly stuff this year that's like, it's fluffy and it expands and you put it around the top of the pot. It is like insulation or something. It's all fluffy. Eric ate it. So we kept taking it out the top of the pots. So yes, we do go back to our favourite of sharp grit, which seems to work very well. Just putting little piles of sharp grit around the plants. I actually do like to eat air dahlias. Trudy, I plant anything from teasel to wild garlic and collect seeds and sprinkle on barren land in our lane. Perfect. Kay says, by witchy, I probably mean the plants for healing and spells. Well, that's it, Kay. All of them. Every single plant can be used for healing and spells. There isn't a particular list of specifically witchy ones. Well, there are. You'll find the general ones in books. But all of them can be used for magical. All of them. Everything. Absolutely everything. Jackie has flying snails too. Jane says, rosemary beetles love sage. Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with those. Helen, I've used eggshells around my sunflowers this year, which worked well. Cool. Lou is currently making do with my windowsill garden. Lots of indoor plants and a little balcony as we're living in a flat. We're looking for a house this year and I'd love a long wandering garden. But making the most of what you've got, if all you have is a windowsill or a balcony, you can utilise it really well and do so much with it. Tony tried. Yes, it was like wool. We tried it, didn't work. But yes, it didn't work with the snails. No, it didn't work with the snails. But yes, it does keep the moisture in and the plants as well. Maria says, copper tape is supposed to give them a shock. That's quite cruel, really. Most of the time they're climbing onto the plants from the walls. Yeah, I think it depends on your situation, doesn't it? But let's deal with the whole witchy plants thing. Everything can be used for magic. Absolutely everything. Even grass has magical properties. But everything. And there are the ones that aren't traditional, like dahlias. We've got a lot of dahlias in our garden. And you don't often see them mentioned in magical spells or books or lists of magical plants, but they still have their own magic. Each plant is individual, but you can work with the colour magic with them and you can work with the energy of the plant. If you have a garden, even if you just have a plant on your windowsill, connect with the plant spirit. It will tell you what magic it can help you with. And just because a book says, well, basil's good for prosperity or mint's good for prosperity, doesn't mean it's going to work that way for you. You need to connect with the individual plant to see what it can help you with. What works for one isn't always going to work for the other. But I think you need to look at the plants, look at the way it grows, look at the colour of the flower, the colour of the leaves. Really spend some time and look really, really closely. Look at the veining in the leaves and in the petals. Look at the way the flower grows, whether it's a climber, whether it's tall, whether it's short, whether it sprawls out over the floor. And you'll be able to get some idea from that as to what magic it can help you with. One of the plants that we have in our garden, several plants, is the Clematis. You don't generally find it on magical lists. It's not generally in witchcraft books or magical lists. So it hasn't got a traditional magical property, but it's a climber. So for me, I use Clematis. Usually I use the seed heads because the seed heads are really funky on Clematis plants. They're like little balls of mad hair. We've got a few in the garden now, actually. I'm just waiting till they're a little bit drier to collect them. So I use Clematis in spells for growth, for reaching those goals, for attaining the heights, your desires, your wishes, your goals that you want to reach, because they're climbing plants, so they're reaching up high. They're also really good for binding. If you've ever looked at the leaves of a Clematis, the stems of the leaves wind themselves really tightly around anything that's in their vicinity. So they're really good for spells for holding on to things. They're really good for spells for keeping things in place or for binding things. And then you can work with colour. Red for passion, yellow for happiness, blue for healing. For any of the plants, colour magic can come into it. But it's about studying the plant and how it grows, what it looks like, and what feelings and energy you get from it. But absolutely everything can be used as a witchy plant. Jane says, we might not be able to grow everything we want in the available space, but the herbs and plants we need for our own particular will somehow find their way there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if you only have a windowsill that's got one pot on it, you'll find it's the one that you need. Willow Moon. All plants and gardens are magical. I've seen amazing balcony gardens. Yes, in high-rise flats. Yes, that you can, if you've got a bit of creativity, you can create some amazing space. Christine, when we had grass at the front, it went all mossy, so we changed and put flowers in, and we're getting grass growing. Nature insists on doing its own thing, but I kind of like the grass. It's extra green. Grass, very, very magical. Grass has its own magical properties. It's really good for all sorts of magical things. Okay, my lavender bush trimmings are now put on the dirt around the plants, and that helps to keep snails away too. Interesting, haven't heard that one. There are tiny caterpillars on my geraniums now too. That's good. That means you'll get butterflies. Lavender's one thing that doesn't really grow in our garden very well because it doesn't like the heavy clay soil. Lani says, I love Dahlia. My plant died last year, but I resawed it and took care of it and it has come back really well. Dahlias do, though. They do die. They'll die right back over the winter so that you can't see them at all. We lift the tubers out and store them, and then we replant them again in the spring and they come back again. Jane, they just get a buzz from my copper tape and come back for more. Your snails are addicted. you have snails that are addicted to the shock from copper tape. Definitely. John is looking out. We're making the coffee. My first gladioli is showing a bit of red today. We have our first gladioli too, John. It just started to open yesterday and it is a red one. We've not grown gladiolis in this garden before. We've got a few of them out there. Some of them are upright. Some of them are growing at very strange angles. But we have had the first red buds today as well. So don't think, I have to buy this plant because it's witchy. I have to buy this plant because it's magical. Just buy the plants that you want to buy, or take, if you've got spare ones, give them to friends. My sea holly self-seeded all over the place last year. So all of the girls got given sea holly plants and they've all grown really well. My dad often gives us plants and we give him ones back in return. So cuttings, seeds, seedlings, it's good to share. You can get an awful lot of plants if you've got friends that have gardens because everyone's willing to swap and share. We have some massive sunflowers this year. They must be 8 feet high, probably a little bit more, some of them. And I'm leaving all the seed heads for those because I'm leaving them for the birds because the birds love the seed heads of those. But sunflowers, absolutely brilliant for working magic with, whether it's the petals or the seeds. I must admit, I tend to keep the seeds. And we've got one variety that's called Black Magic. perfect, absolutely perfect for working magic with. But everything does, even the ones that you don't really think about. It's all got magical purpose. It's just about connecting with the spirit of it. And of course, you can use your garden to work magic in. Particularly if you like to work with sun magic, that would be me. You can leave your spells out there outside to work, as long as you put them out the way of cats, dogs, and small children. I leave spells out there to work. I leave spells out there to be charged with. I leave my summon crystals out there to be charged by the sun. But you can work magic in your garden by placing an altar there. We've actually got a statue of a wizard in the garden. We've called him Steve. I don't know why. It just seemed to be his name. He's got a book that he's holding open in his hand, and it's brilliant for putting offerings in. He's holding a few crystals at the moment. And of course, crystals work really well in the garden as well. You can place crystals around the garden in pots, particularly to help plants grow, to direct energy, to help them flourish. All sorts of crystals lend themselves to working in the garden. I tend to not put really expensive ones in the garden. I look out when I'm in the charity shops, and if I can find crystals there really cheaply, quite often those ones go in the garden. You can work magic as well by drawing sigils in the soil. We've got a big paving slab that's got the shape of a compass on it. Absolutely brilliant for working magic on. So your garden can become another place for you to work magic, and it can become a place for you to have an altar. We've also got several green man plaques. We've got some green women plaques as well. We've got moon symbols and sun symbols. You can make the garden very magical by adding crystals and plaques and things. It is a magical place anyway, but you can make it your own, really. Right, just looking at some of the, Maria, you have to be careful. Some plants are very toxic to cats and dogs. We had white gladiolus opening this week, as they had as our puppy raven eats the flowers. Oh no. Yeah, dogs tend to do that. Yeah. John, I left grass amongst my chives as it had a seed head that had red tinge and just couldn't pull it up. Some plants, they just grow where they want to grow. And what's a weed? A weed is really just a plant that's growing in the wrong place. I think it's very, what classifies as a weed? Why is one plant a weed and one plant is a flower? Interesting. Kay says, saying snails are addicted reminds me my dad used to dig a hole big enough for a plastic cup with beer in it. My dad does exactly the same. The slugs and the snails loved it. Yes, they would have died happy. Yeah, my dad puts the beer traps down as well. It's quite an old thing, isn't it? An old-fashioned thing to do, but it works. Lani says, my dad has an abundance of mint and lemon balm, so when mine doesn't grow, I can just go to him and get cutting. Mint and lemon balm are really, really easy to take cuttings from, and they grow like mad. In fact, the mint and lemon balm we have in our garden stays in pots, because if you put it in the ground, it does have a tendency to be a bit of a thug. Karen, I'm going to try and grow sea holly next year. Love it, but never grown it. I'm surprised, actually, that it's grown in our soil, because it does like free drained loose kind of soil, and it is in a really heavy clay, although we dug in a lot of stuff beforehand, but it seems quite happy, and the bees love it, and it's got a fantastic luminous blue color to it. Sea holly, not something that you'll generally see in magical books with magical meanings, but for me it's a real crone magic plant, particularly when the seed heads dry, because they stay exactly as they are, and you can dry them whole and they'll stay like that forever. But I tend to work with them for crone magic, because for me it's got that kind of energy to it. Jane, a friend gave me a periwinkle I know where you're going with this, many years ago, saying they make good ground cover. Rudest plant ever. Yes, it is a big thug. Very pretty, but definitely a big thug. grows through everything. Yes, absolutely. You do have to be careful with some of the plants. They do like to take over. Maria says, would that attract ants? What, the beer traps? Doesn't seem to. Just seems to, the slugs fall in, have a good drink and die happy. Tony, moss agate in a water can. Moss agate's absolutely brilliant for anywhere in the garden because it encourages growth. It's a real nature, makes things grow, makes things fertile kind of crystal. It is brilliant. Just turning the chair so dogging it down. Willow Moon made a shrine to Credwin in one part of the garden. Found a fantastic corn-shaped plant pot. Excellent. I do have one actually. I've got a few houseplants. First year I've grown houseplants. I'm not very good with houseplants, but these seem to have survived all right. I have a little cauldron flower pot. You can find some fantastic things. We've actually grown annuals in plastic cauldrons that we got in at Halloween in the cheap stores. Jane says a slug pub, yes, with a very unfortunate ending. Erin, I put some crystal chips in my balcony planters to give my herbs a bit of a boost. Perfect, perfect. Christine says, I bury a lot of my spells in the front garden. Lots of goddess wall plaques and green man with a broken now as a cat knocked it off the bacola. Yeah, cats like to swipe stuff, don't they? Again, yes, as you say, spells buried in the garden. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Jackie says, my garden was created for magic. I've always done my spell work in the garden. I do a lot of mine out there. Joe, my violets love hugging the fence and wall of the house. Not helpful when we needed to move them to have repairs done. Yeah. Some things do like hugging walls, don't they? We have gargoyles. Fantastic. Love a gargoyle dotted around as well as beautiful Buddha outside my healing room. Perfect. Perfect. John says, many books say drying of plants and herbs should be done in the dark. Why, when they grow in the sun and the moon and take the energy from them, using the sun to dry them surely adds more energy. That's how I do it. I dry mine in the sun. I lay them out on trays in the conservatory so they get a lot of sun. The reason for drying them in the dark is so that they don't fade. If you dry a lot of the herbs in the sun, it does fade the colour because sun bleaches things, doesn't it? So that's really why. If you dry them in the dark, they don't tend to lose their colour so much. Personal choice, and whatever space you've got as well. Choice. Okay, my mint is in a pot. 1, because you can choose the soil, and 2, you can contain it. Yeah, mint is a thug too. Trudy, Hubby will not give up his beer. Buy a cheap can. Go and buy a cheap can. Had to move the sea holly. It's been eaten so badly. Fingers crossed. Oh, poor sea holly. Karen, I've used those cordons as well. They are great plants. They're brilliant. Jane says, if you want ants to get busy refining your compost heap, put whole rhubarb leaves in. Ants are attracted to them, make an instant roof for their nest. Brilliant idea. Thank you, Jane. I didn't know that. Excellent. I'd buy cheap beer for your slugs. Slugs don't mind. They don't need the good stuff. So working magic in your garden gives you another area, and nature lends its energy to it. The sun, the rain, you can write things in the soil and let the rain wash them away. You can write petitions or sigils on paper and leave it out for the sun to bleach. You can work so much magic in your garden or on your windowsill or on your balcony by using the weather as well. Rain, thunder, snow, if you get it. We don't get it very often. So your garden actually gives you another space to work magic in. You can also tailor it for magic specifically if you want to. I mentioned altars and shrines. So you could set aside an area to make a shrine for a particular deity. You can have an offering space. I have the base of, we have an old tree trunk from an old Wagella that we hang all of our bird feeders on, and the base of that is really good for leaving offerings. It's got a little green man and some crystals there, but you could leave offerings there for fairies if you work with fairies, but for nature and for the goddess, for the god, for the green man, whoever you want to leave offerings to. But you could create a specific shrine. You can create gardens with a theme, or areas of your garden with a theme. You could have your garden split into 4 for the 4 different elements. I've got a list in here, actually. Let's have a look at the list, because, brain going ahead. Actually, let me mention divas and plant spirits first. I've talked about plant spirits. Each plant has its own plant spirit that's useful to connect with. But your garden as a whole will have a foreman. It'll have a garden manager. It'll have someone that oversees the whole thing, and they are called divas, D-E-V-A-S. They are like the architect of all of the plant spirits within your garden. So it's really worth getting to know the diva for your garden as well. It's kind of, they look after the whole lot as a whole, kind of managing all of the other plant spirits. So it's really worth getting to know those as well. And if you have trees in your garden, it's worth getting to know the dryads. The tree will have a spirit of its own, but it may also have a dryad, which is a spirit that lives in the tree but can wander about as well. It's lots of spirits. Lots of spirits all over the place. But you can tailor your garden. You can give it a theme, or even just an area of it, give it a theme. You can start with a dark and deadly place. You can use an area for baneful plants, but not if you've got small children or pets. You can grow belladonna, datura, aconite, delphinium's poisonous too, dogsbane, foxgloves, they are quite toxic, hellebores, hemlock, henbane, lily of the valley actually is toxic, larkspur, mandrake, if you can get the darn thing to grow. Myself and the Kitchen Witch posse all had mandrake seeds. We did not fare well with them. They are notoriously difficult to grow. Mistletoe, very magical plant, but actually the berries, very toxic. And yew tree, brilliant for death and rebirth, but toxic. And wormwood sounds brilliant, but it is, well, it goes into the drink absinthe. If anybody's ever had absinthe, whoo, it's like drinking liquid petrol. But wormwood goes into that, but it is like drinking paint stripper. But in large quantities, wormwood is toxic as well. So you could grow a dark and deadly garden, but just be mindful if you've got pets and things. You could grow a seasonal garden. You could have different areas of your garden for different seasons. Spring bulbs, summer flowers, autumn ones for the leaves and the colour, winter ones, things like dogswood that's got pretty colour bark. You could have your garden split into sabbats. You could split it into 8 areas and have plants associated with each of the sabbats. Let's just keep up with the comments before then. Jane, worms in the heap love out of date beer or lager. You've got some very happy worms in your compost bin. Sue says, silica granules in a tub with flowers for drying, great results. Intensify. Yes, if you are drying, particularly rose petals, Sue, it's good for, isn't it? If you put silica granules in with them, they keep their colour, because rose petals are notorious for losing their colours when they die. Tony says, do you have to take leaves out before using compost? Rhubarb leaves are poisonous to soil, I believe. I think that was Jane, wasn't it? I'll let you answer that one. John says, out of date beer works just as well. Yes, get really cheap beer for you. Your slugs don't mind. Use really cheap beer for your slug traps. Kay says, I would love a thunderstorm, but we don't seem to be in a general pathway of storms. We get them occasionally, but not too often. Jane, there you go. No, they'll be devoured by the iggies and pooped out as compost, not poison. Thank you. They decompose in no time and quite harmless once broken down. That's the rhubarb leaves. Thank you, Jane. How do you get to know them? I'm assuming you mean the plant spirits. Spend time with them. Sit with each individual plant. Sit close by to it. Touch it. Feel the leaves, feel the flowers, feel the petals. Really look at the details of the plant. Look at the veining in the leaves. Look at the color of the stems. The stems, the leaves, the flowers, they'll all have a different touch to them. Connect with that spirit. Just spend time with it. Sit with it quietly, get to know it. Ask if you can connect with the spirit, and literally open your mind to the spirit of the plant. It helps to sit quietly. It's a bit like a meditation, but you sit quietly with that plant and get to know it, and you send out your spidey senses, and hopefully it will reply to you. We have a lovely 250-year-old olive tree and a pretty cherry tree. Fantastic. We have a tiny olive tree. It's about, a couple of feet now. One of those rescue ones from the garden centre where they're selling it off for, a quid because it looks really sad. So we rescued that one. There was an actress, can't think of her name, openly admitted she was a witch, who stuck a curse to someone stealing it on the bottom of a garden ornament gnome, but it got stolen. 2 weeks later, it's brought back saying that their family got sick since they took it. See, don't steal garden gnomes, especially not from witches. John, nature does gift you. I have grown helichrysum for 14 years in a rush. Forgot them this year. Been gifted 3. The kids love to touch. Yes, brilliant. It does, doesn't it? I mean, we've got one quite large holly tree in our garden now, and one very small one. We didn't buy them. They were just dropped in the garden and they've started growing. It's brilliant. Nature will do its thing, and birds obviously drop things quite often as well, whether they drop them from their beaks or from their poop. I think that's where the holly came from. But nature will find a way. It really does. Jane says, if you want to protect something, I put the curse of Treaderup on it. I'm not going to read the Latin. Anyone who messes with me is dead meat. Well, that kind of says everything, really, doesn't it? Definitely. Trudy, I planted a twisted hazel when my daughter was born, but it died after 18 years. After the upset, the stump stands proud. It's now used as a support for my clematis. Hagstones hang from it. It still protects the space, I feel, and shooters still sprout from its base. Plants do tend to have a lifespan. Trees obviously usually last longer, but for, some reasons things die. They get diseases, they get all sorts of things. For whatever reason, they run out of nutrients, and they do have a lifespan generally. Some plants, foxgloves, a year and they're gone kind of thing. And just shrubs and things as well. Sometimes you get 4 or 5 years and then they're done. So things do have a lifespan. But quite often, as you say, it ends up being something else. Weigella, no longer a Weigella tree, but the trunks are useful for hanging all of the bird feeders on, and it looks fantastic. So yes, utilising stuff, reutilising stuff in the garden is brilliant. Jackie has hawthorns popping up in different places that I had not planted. Yeah, nature likes to gift, doesn't she? She really likes to gift. So yes, different things for gardens. Jumping about here to make sure I get all your comments in. Sabbats, you could have different areas of the garden split into 8 for the different sabbats, or you could have a wheel flower bed divided into 8. That would work really well. And each sabbat has plants that are associated with it. So Samhain, you could grow bay, broom, catnip, garlic, heather, mandrake, mugwort, nettle, passion flower, pine, rosemary, imbolc, ash, basil, celandine, chamomile, coriander. Each sabbat has plants that are associated with it, so you could have them all separated out. If you're tight on space, obviously container gardening is really clever. And there's all sorts of things you can do. You can go upwards. If you're short of space, go upwards. Utilize the walls. Put pallets on the walls. Put shelves on the walls. I've even seen old step ladders used with plants going all the way up. And old furniture makes fantastic places for plants. I have seen old dressing tables and chest of drawers with pots all along the top, and then plants planted in the drawers pulled out. Fantastic. Really, really inventive ways of doing it. You could have an intent garden or areas of your garden for specific intents. So you could have a protection area, a prosperity area, you could have a healing area, and grow plants in those areas that you associate with those intents. Prosperity garden for me would definitely have lots of greenery in it, but there's all sorts of plants that are associated with that intent. You could have a love garden. You could have all the plants that are associated with that. Got to be roses in there, hasn't there? You could have a rose arch with a little love seat underneath it as well. Healing garden, protection garden. You could have a garden associated with a particular planet. Sun garden, a moon garden. Sun garden would be fantastic. Yellows, oranges, brilliant sunshiny colour flowers everywhere. Moon garden with lots of white flowers. There was a white flower garden on Gardener's World last night, and it was absolutely stunning. Every single plant in the lady's garden was white, the white flowers on everything, and it was amazing. Make a brilliant moon garden. Culinary garden. You could just grow fruit and vegetables and herbs. In fact, the old kitchen gardens, cottage gardens, used to be a mixture. So they would mix their flowers in with their vegetables. And actually that's companion planting as well. So there's quite a lot of flowers that if you plant them with fruit and vegetables, they'll keep the aphids away. So mix it up. It doesn't have to be there's the flower bed, there's the vegetable border. Mix it all up. Meditation garden is another idea. You could plant scented plants that give a nice relaxing scent to them. You could hang wind chimes. If the space allows, you could have area for a seat and a little place where you could safely maybe put a candle. Have a little altar there as well. A bit of water in a meditation garden would be lovely too. Another one I like is a herbal tea garden. So you could have an area of your garden where you just grow herbs that you would use in herbal teas. Brilliant. Lemon balm is a perfect one for that, and mint is as well, obviously. Basil. I'm not a great fan of basil tea, but chamomile, coriander, fennel. Fennel's lovely tea, and ginger. I want to grow a ginger. I haven't tried that, but I've seen it a few times. You grow a ginger plant from the ginger root, and it has the most amazing leaves and flowers on it. Lavender, nettles, clover, rosemary, sage. You could have just this area with all the things grown specifically for making herbal teas from. I like anything you can eat. You could have an element garden, and again this would work with a circle if you quartered it, and you could have each area planted with plants that are associated with that specific element. The earth area could also have pebbles and stones and things in it. The air section could have wind chimes and bird feeders. The fire section could have a fire pit or a fire basket, or maybe even just where you put your barbecue. The water area, obviously, a little pond, and you can make a pond literally from an upside down dustbin lid buried into the soil. It doesn't have to be huge or grand. And then surround them with flowers that are associated with each of the four elements, because each plant is associated with one of the four elements, sometimes two of the elements. So it's quite easy to work out for that. Could have a Gothic garden, and I have seen some amazing Gothic gardens. Black. There's a lot of if you look, there's a lot of plants that are black or dark purple flowers. There's a Queen of the Night tulip, which is a really dark purple. There's a purple calla lily. Hellebores come in a really dark purple too. Pansies. There's black pansies, and they look like black velvet. We had them a couple of years ago. And they do. The petals are literally dark black velvet colour. There's a black dahlia. It's actually a really, really dark red, but it looks almost black. Black petunias, chocolate cosmos. Cosmos flowers are lovely anyway, but if you get the chocolate variety, it is a dark brown, but it actually smells of chocolate. There's a list in the book here of lots of things. There's a tea rose that has dark burgundy petals. There's a cranesbill, the genuine geranium, not the pelargonium ones. That's called Black Widow. It's got really dark purple black flowers. There's really, really dark hollyhocks. There's quite a few that are in the sort of dark colours. There's even one called Black Magic. Elderflower, the Sambuca nigra, is really dark purple colour stems and leaves. It's beautiful. There's a whole list. If you look, there's a whole list. Black bamboo as well. You can even get some vegetables that are black as well. Tomatoes and aubergines, that kind of thing. You can get sort of dark purple tomatoes, blackberries. There's whole lists. So if you wanted to go for a really gothic garden where all of the plants are dark purples and blacks and dark deep reds, you could even put little fake gravestones and bits of iron railings and things and make it really dramatic. Different ideas for different people. Sorry, I'm looking back at your comments now. Trudy, he still wouldn't share. It stems from when I borrowed his whiskey for a cake. Yeah, you might have to buy it separately, specifically for the slugs. Kay says, we had an arsonist in my neighbour's garden. No, which the fire got to our 12 cedar trees, so they had to be cut down. That's awful. The apple tree got burnt too, but after cutting the affected branches, it'll get back. Yeah, we're at new shoots and it's recovering. Plants do have an amazing way of adapting and recovering. My mother-in-law picks her jasmine flowers. I collect all the flowers. We've got a pink jasmine in that kind. It's a real sassy pink colour. It's really pretty. Erin, my balcony is a tea garden. Don't have much space, so I skipped flowers and planted mint, chamomile, lavender, orange balm, pineapple sage, and lemon thyme. Absolutely perfect. Brilliant idea, Erin. Excellent. Jane, I'd love to meditate in my back garden, but there's hardly any time when it's not invaded by the thumping bass vibes. Oh, we've got a couple of neighbours like that. Smell of wacky backy, building work noise, people arguing. I'd have to sneak out at 3 a.m. to do it. Then you need a night garden. You need to plant things that flower and give off their scent at night time. But yeah, neighbours you have to put up with, don't you? Jackie, my garden started out as an element garden. Was going to put a half barrel in for the element water, but it ended up with a 6-foot pond. Definitely water, though. Definitely water. Lani, I've had chocolate cosmos before. It kept making me hungry. It really does smell of chocolate, doesn't it? It's an amazing thing. Very clever. John, ginger, go to an Indian shop, pick fresh. Yes, pick fresh ginger with the shoots that have started to grow. It may take a few visits before we find a good one. Also, grow turmeric the same way. Yes, I have seen that. We have a brilliant Asian food shop near us. I do get my root ginger from there. It's clever stuff, isn't it? Joe says, purple potatoes. Yes, I have seen those. Willow Moon. Hubby got me black tulips. They were gorgeous, but they changed colour the next year. Tulips, I think, are things that if you want them to come true, you buy them the first year and they'll be stunning. The second year, they're never as good. It just seems to be one of those ways. One of those things. She uses them for her tea. Jasmine tea. Excellent. Yes, very nice. I like jasmine tea. Maria, there's a rude neighbour who was away for months who's now back, who has a radio station on from dawn till dusk for all to hear whether we like it or not. Yes. I'm trying to freeze a spell on her and waiting for it to do its work. Fingers crossed it will. People are they're just rude, aren't they? Willow Moon, what do you do with all the flesh? Yes, I have got boxes and boxes and boxes. If you look on my YouTube channel, there is I did a video called My Herbal Stash. And I do have stacks and stacks of them. Cupboard, big whole bookshelf full of them and more. You do need a bit of space for it. Definitely need a bit of space. But I do love the idea of a goth garden. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. You could have a carnivorous bog garden. Not my idea, I must admit. I think it sounds amazing if you've got, if you like the idea. When we were small, my dad had one of the Venus flytrap plants until us as kids kept poking it with things and killed it. fact. It's what kids do. But a bog garden with carnivorous plants works really well. You could put that inside your Gothic garden, would be fantastic. Or you can have a carnivorous plant garden indoors as well. But there are loads of different types of these pitcher plants and things as well that all eat meat, basically. Wildlife garden. Ours is kind of that way anyway. If you have a diversity of plants, then you will attract different types of wildlife. And I also noticed last time we were in the garden centre, one particular brand of plants they had, all of the labels told you what wildlife liked it, what particular birds liked it, and what particular insects went for it, which I think is a fantastic idea. But wildlife garden, if you want to bring the wildlife in, then you will need some water. As I say, literally just an upturned bin lid, and you've got a little pond or a washing up bowl sunk into the ground. Water for the birds, water for the animals, and you will get all sorts of things coming as well. Bird feeders are an obvious one to bring the birds in, but make sure that you have plants that have seed heads and berries and things. And although we do deadhead dahlias and pelargoniums and all the kind of annual things like that, the summer flowers, we deadhead them to increase their flowering. Things like the sunflowers we do leave, and then at the end of the year, end of the season, I tend to leave things to go to seed so that the birds have got something to eat as well. But you can also encourage things by having bug hotels. You can build your own, you can buy them, ladybird houses, bee houses, bat houses you can have as well. There are particular plants that they like as well. Bats like nightstock particularly. Not that we're ever in any chance of getting bats where I am, but encouraging different types of wildlife in your garden just helps the whole balance of things as well. But there are specific things that they like. Herb garden is a kind of, I've got a herb area. I think we probably all have. That I think they work quite well in pots, but I've also seen herb gardens built as spirals or built into wheel shapes. You can do all sorts of things. Deity garden. If you work with a particular deity, you can have the area of the garden set up with a shrine to them, but you could grow plants that are associated with them as well. There's some in here. So Bast, got to grow catnip really, haven't you? But she likes rue and valerian and vervain as well. Venus, anemone, angelica, apple, apricot and aster. There are particular plants that are associated with particular deities, so you could grow those plants in honor of the particular god or goddess that you work with. You could grow a pantheon garden. So if you work with the Greek pantheon, you could particularly pick Greek plants, Egyptian plants, Celtic plants, Chinese plants. There's all different things to work from there. Fiction garden. If you've got a particular book that you like, I mean, Alice in Wonderland lends itself to a garden beautifully. All of the things that you could have, all of the different flowers and plants that are mentioned in that book, and you could pop teapots and all sorts of things in there. A Hobbit garden. The Lord of the Rings, a Hobbit book in particular, mentions quite a lot of plants, so you could go through and pick out the particular plants that are mentioned in it. Harry Potter garden. You could grow all sorts of things, again, that are mentioned in the books. Tailor it to it and add some funky stuff in as well. And, of course, the traditional fairy garden. Although if you are building a fairy garden, I would be mindful that I think working with the fae is a calling and you need to do your research first. But they do particularly like specific things in a garden, in a fairy garden, that you can set up for them. There's particular plants and things that they like. Planetary garden. All of the plants are generally ruled by a different planet as well. You could pick one of the planets, Mars, Mercury, Neptune, and plant the plants that are associated with that. A zodiac garden or even a zodiac wheel would work really well as well, where you could plant different plants that are associated with the different zodiacs. Loads and loads of different ideas in there for different themed gardens. And if you've got any ideas yourself, do pop them in the comments, because we all love a bit of inspiration. Kay says there is a bylaw that after certain hours, all music and loud noises must have the volume turned down, and you complain to the. It's got to be at a certain decibel. okay. And I think the decibel is actually quite high. So yeah, but if it is a pain, you can put in complaints. Put a CD player outside with a lot of brass band music on repeat. She might get the hint about marching orders. Perfect. Maria, I used to play metal, but she just turns us up. Yeah, she's just ignorant. She's just ignorant. Jane says, what time can I dial the cops? I thought it was 11 o'clock, but have a look at contact your local council. They'll be able to tell you the details for that, Jane. Next year, my husband is planning to keep bees. Fantastic, which is exciting. But the back section of the garden is to be left as a wildflower garden. So this year he's planted the seeds, a bath for the frogs, looking for. Oh, that's really exciting. Really exciting. We are lucky. We get lots of bees in their garden, but really exciting to be keeping them. Fantastic. I'm just looking through all the comments. Yes, you can. There is if you've got problems with noisy neighbours, contact your, there's a particular, noise pollution department on your local council. Tony used to have moon garden shaped in a moon crescent and white plants and night plants. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay, I saw a beautiful zodiac floor mosaic in a shop. Could easily be done in the garden. Yes, would work brilliantly. Would work really brilliantly. So lots and lots of ideas. You could theme lots of things to magical ideas, but ultimately I think the garden should reflect your personality. Ours is loud and full of bright colours and mad things. So that kind of reflects our personality. But grow what you like. It doesn't have to be specifically witchy plants, because everything in nature has magical properties. Absolutely everything. So don't think you have to grow specific this and specific that. Every single plant has magical properties. So tailor the garden to your personality, to the size, to the budget, to the aspect, because you have to take into account sunshade and the soil properties. But whatever garden you create, it will be magical. Even if it's just a green grass lawn, the grass has a magic of its own. So make the garden yours, really, but do connect with the energy of it, because for me, that is the most important part of it. Enjoy. And if you want to share pictures of particular plants or your gardens, do pop them in the comments. We'd love to see pictures of your garden. Anything that you've got that's a fascinating plant or something that you've done that's interesting with your garden, do share them in the comments. We'd love to see them. If you want to see pictures of my garden, there's lots on my Facebook page, and there are several YouTube videos. I usually do a monthly YouTube video of a quick wander around the garden, so that's on my YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. Love talking about the garden. Could talk about the garden for ages. It is a sanctuary, that's for sure. So enjoy your gardens this weekend. Enjoy whatever you're doing this weekend. And as always, do take care, and I will see you all again next week.